So this is the economic update for June 1st, 2025. So we'll go through the jobs report. Basically, this is the last one we have is from the beginning of May. We'll get the next one very shortly. But the unemployment rate was 4.2%, which has been holding steady between 4 and 4.2% since May of last year at around 7.2 million people. Job openings per unemployed person, these are roughly about 1 to 1. There's always a mismatch of skills and location, so this is not necessarily good for people looking for employment, but if people are looking to hire, it's much easier to hire somebody now. You'll get more applicants and you won't have to pay as much, which is, again, not good for the employee, better for the employer at the moment. Jobs added, they added 177,000 people in the past month. The 27-week unemployment, basically this went up 179,000 people. So there's now 1.7 million people who have been unemployed for more than 6 months. For our inflation, May 13th, we got our PCI readings, basically 2.3% and 2.8% for core. When we say core, this just means it excludes food and energy. They're considered to be more volatile, so they get excluded sometimes. We did get on 16th of May, basically the 12-month expectation for inflation is 7.3%. That's not really good because that's going up. When people think there's going to be inflation, people will start to buy more things and spend more money on those things because they think they're going to go up in the not too distant future. 30th of May, this is the other inflation indicator. So this is PCE. So we got 2.1% and PCE core at 2.5%. So they're not that far off from PCE versus PCI. So they're both going in the right direction. They're going down. And the target's around 2%. So on May 7th, the Fed had their open market committee meeting. They held interest rates at 4.25% to 4.5%. It's pretty much been there for a couple of months. They're not ready to yet reduce or increase the interest rate because they see that there's an increased risk of higher unemployment. Not that unemployment has gone much higher. It's just that there's a risk that it could go higher. And they also at the same time see that there's an increased risk of higher inflation. Again, inflation has not gone higher, but they're worried that it could be doing that. So the Fed doesn't want to do anything until they actually know what's going on with the tariffs. So if there's very high tariffs, you're likely to see high inflation on those products. You also may see that some people may have higher unemployment, lower unemployment. Who knows? Generally, when you have tariffs, other countries will then put tariffs on your goods, which means then you'll manufacture less goods, and then you don't need as many people to be working to manufacture it. The last time we had tariffs was during the Great Depression. It was said to potentially have made things much worse. There was about a 66% reduction in overall trade between countries in the United States back then. And that's when we had about a 20% tariff. The other risk that I see right now that I'm a bit concerned with is the Japanese bond risk. So right now, Japan tried to sell off 30 and 40-year bonds, and they didn't have enough people or entities trying to buy those up. So it greatly increased any of the long-term debt for the Japanese yen. The Bank of Japan has stopped buying the Japanese yen-based bonds and left it open to basically the free market. And the free market came back and basically said this has an increased risk, therefore we need a higher return or a higher interest rate on these bonds, or coupon rate, whatever you want to call it. So that's a concern. So what's been going on for a number of years is there's something called the Japanese yen. It's a carry trade, and this is getting worse. What I mean by that is, in the past, basically you could borrow yen for 0% or actually negative interest, and then you can convert that to US dollars, invest that into the US market, make money, and then pay back the debt back in yen. The problem is if the yen gets stronger compared to the US dollar, which it has been doing at various times. Again, that was August of 2024, which also had an impact to the US stock market. And currently it's also getting stronger compared to the US dollar. The other thing is, because of those high bond yields, people are going to have to pull money back, or they're not going to be able to borrow money in yen and trade on the US stock market. The other big one is Japan. You might not know this, but they actually hold $1.1 trillion of US-based debt. If they pull out of the debt in US dollars, that could leave a vacuum and could actually make interest rates higher on US debt. The other thing that makes money more expensive for US debt is May 16th, the US credit has been downgraded from AAA to AA1 on Moody's. And basically, they cited national debt concerns and growing deficits as a concern. The only thing that I think saves the US is that US debt is denominated in US dollars. So for the time being, as long as that continues to be the situation, one thing that the US could always do is print more money to pay off that debt. But if they do that, then that drives up inflation. So that's an issue, and then that would normally result in higher interest rates, and that can result in more unemployment. And a lot of people may not want to buy US debt if we just print a lot of money. So countries that printed a bunch of money throughout history would be like Argentina or like Germany and the Weimar Republic. Basically, they had runaway inflation, and then people just didn't want to buy that debt. But again, their debt was not denominated in their currency. So that's one thing saving the US. May 27th, looking at housing, we got our pending home sales. Basically, it's minus 6.3% month over month. This is not a good sign. In the Northeast, we didn't really see much of a change. So if you're in the Northeast, you're not going to see a huge difference in the number of sales of homes. They're still selling pretty quickly, at least in my area. But if you look at maybe the Midwest, it's at like -5. If you look out, the West Coast, California, it's at -8.9%. The one thing I'm seeing is that the house prices are still stable. There's not a dramatic drop in home prices at this point. Many people that are in their homes, a lot of them actually own their homes outright, and there's also a good number of people that still owe mortgages on their homes, but those mortgages are less than 3%. So those people don't necessarily want to sell homes to then buy a house and then pay, 6.9%, which is the current 30-year average fixed rate mortgage. It's going up a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but if you look over the last year, it hasn't changed that dramatically, in my opinion. 30th May, looking at the consumer, this would be somewhat of a leading indicator. Consumer confidence has gone up 12.3% from April. April is very low, historically low. Consumer sentiment, this is continuing to stay flat or low. So it's not worse, but it hasn't gotten better. Consumer spending has increased over the past month by $47.8 billion. It's increasing, but it's not increasing as fast as it used to. Income has gone up month over month. It's like plus 0.8%. So it's an increase. 29 May, GDP, this is more of a lagging indicator because we don't get the data until several months after it happens. First quarter GDP, they revised this from minus 0.3% back to minus 0.2%. And the main issue was there were a lot of imports trying to get things in before tariffs. The government also reduced some of the spending. So if you look at the calculation for GDP, you have consumer spending plus investment plus government spending plus exports minus imports. So we had a huge amount for our imports and a small amount for government spending. So that's how we ended up with negative GDP. To have a recession, you should have 2 quarters of negative GDP, and they've added a bunch of other things that should be added in there, but typically a traditional recession was 2 negative quarters of GDP. Second quarter GDP came out on May 30th. The forecast is plus 3.8%. So we'll see if this holds steady over the next couple of months. 29th of May, we had our business corporate profits were down minus 2.9% in the first quarter. So how could you boost profit? Well, a company could cut costs. So how do they do that? They could lay people off, or they can increase revenue. How do you increase revenue? You can increase the price of the items that you're selling, or you can then increase the volume of the goods that you sell. The other thing I'm thinking here is if you had negative 2.9% in the first quarter, could some of this be from, say, for example, Apple? They bought in over 600 tons of products into the United States before tariffs took effect in order to not pay additional tariffs. So that may have been an increased cost in the first quarter, and they may sell those products in second quarter, and that may rebound and show a much bigger profit in the second quarter when they're not paying as much for tariffs, at least while that inventory lasts. A couple companies are talking about increasing their price. So Walmart, Target, AutoZone, Best Buy, they all increased their prices, and they cited it's due to the tariffs. If we look on May 27th, we got a report for durable goods. Those new orders, they spiked basically in March and came back down in April. So it'll show like headlines, minus 6.3% month over month, and people try to panic you. But overall, it's very similar to February. So it's just a quick spike and then right back down to where it was. So I'm not really making much out of it. So for me, PMI is a bit more important. This is at 48.7. Anything less than 50, it just means that the manufacturing is reducing in the United States. This has been going on since 2023, so it's not a huge, change to me at least. Manufacturing has not yet really gained a lot of ground. It was up for a couple of months earlier this year, but that's about it. So the Treasury at the end of May, so if you look at the 10-year minus the 2-year, so over the last couple of years, we were below zero, so this is called an inverted yield. Usually you would think long-term debt would be higher yield than short-term debt, but it's been the reverse for some time. And then we finally broke that uninverted, and then now we see about a 0.5% for that difference. Now, generally what happens is right before a recession, it inverts and then uninverts and hits 0.5%. We saw this happen in 1990, 2001, 2007. We just barely got to 2020. It was like 0.49, and we're there now at 2025. So this is usually a leading indicator of like you're going into a recession. Now, that being said, the economy is not the stock market and vice versa. So for an example, you could have a business and they could say, we're going to lay off 10% of all the employees. That would cut costs, but would potentially increase their profitability, which then in the stock market, if they show they have more profit, basically price to earnings, their earnings are much higher, their profit's higher, their stock may actually go up even though they reduce jobs, and the people that are affected are in the economy and can't spend as much money elsewhere. So that's why I'm saying like the economy and the stock market are not the same. Also, the stock market is effectively just how people feel. If people feel good, it goes up. If people don't feel good about the money that they have or what's available and there's not a lot of liquidity, basically the stock market goes down. And things like the Japanese yen carry trade and like differences in yields can affect the US as well. Good news, the recession odds have gone down to about less than 50%, 30 to 50%, depending on where I'm looking. A lot of them are saying that effectively, once the tariffs were put on pause for 90 days, this was reduced. While the tariffs were in effect, the odds of recession went up dramatically. But remember, the tariff pauses are only supposed to be until July, so who knows what's going to happen 2 months from now. If you're worried about a recession, just remember that the average recession, about 90% of people stay employed. The unemployment rate might be about 8% on average during most recessions. They typically last about 10 months. It's not as short as in 2020 where it was only 2 months, and it's not as long as typically as like the 2008, 2009, 18-month recession. So what am I doing through all of this? Well, no matter what time it is, I'm going to have about a 6-month emergency fund. Right now, I'm holding a little bit more than this, probably closer to a year at this point. Any money that I need in the next, say, 5 years or less, I'm going to have in high yield savings. I'm going to have it in CDs, something that's FDIC and within the limit of the FDIC. Anything that I don't need for at least 5 years, I'm going to use dollar cost averaging. I'm going to continue to buy those investments. This is my stock portfolio, let's say. Most of this is going to go into companies which are in the S&P 500. It would be the S&P 500, but it could also be a total market return, which even those are 80% made up by the S&P 500 companies. And 10% into international stocks. Basically, if the US has some issues, hopefully the other companies outside of the US do a little bit better. And right now I have about 10% divided by SGOV, which are bonds, and cash, just getting ready to make other investments as this unfolds. I want to kind of understand what goes on with the tariffs a little bit more over the next couple of months. So SGOV is basically 3 months and less for government bonds, and they pay out right now about 4.5% roughly. So remember, all investments carry risks. They can lose value. Past performance is no guarantee of future performance. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you enjoy this type of information, as well as how to start businesses, how to save money, how to invest, how to make more money at work or starting a business. This is a channel for you. Please subscribe and have a great day.